The second part of Chapter 5 covers connective tissues, muscle tissues, and the nervous tissue. Connective tissues is the most abundant tissue type. Here, compared to epithelial tissues, the cells in connective tissues are farther apart than in epithelial tissues, and there's matrix between the cells. There are many functions to connective tissues. Here they bind structures together, provide support, protection, serve as frameworks, fill spaces, store fat, produce blood cells, and protect against infections, as well as repairing tissue damage. The important thing from this slide, what is the extracellular matrix? So this means outside of the cell, there are protein fibers and ground substance. Ground substance is a thick liquid found inside connective tissue. So here together, fibers and ground substance mean the matrix. The ground substance, and therefore the consistency of connective tissue, can range from fluid to semi-solid to solid. Most connective tissues do have good blood supply and are well nourished. The major cell types in connective tissue include fibroblasts. These are the most common fixed cell. They have a star-shaped cell. The important thing is that these make fibers. So these make those protein fibers. Also in connective tissues, macrophages can be found. These are important for defense against infection because they're able to do phagocytosis, meaning eat a bacterial cell or a parasite cell. Mast cells, these have two functions. They release heparin to prevent blood clotting, meaning unnecessary blood clotting, and they also release histamine for inflammation. Three types of connective tissue fibers. There are collagen, elastic, and reticular. Collagen fibers are the strongest. These are the thickest and strongest fibers. Elastic fibers are able to stretch and recoil. They're not as strong as collagen fibers though. And the reticular fibers are the thinnest. They're actually a type of collagen fiber, but they're a thin type. These form the delicate, softer organs, tissues. And so these make up our spleen and liver. The different types of connective tissues we're going to cover are connective tissue proper and then the specialized connective tissues. Within the connective tissue proper, we'll go into loose connective tissues, which include areolar, adipose, reticular. Then the dense connective tissues include dense regular, dense irregular, elastic. Then the specialized connective tissues, cartilage, bone, and blood. For areolar connective tissue, here the main cell type are the fibroblasts. The ground substance is more gelatin-like. This tissue has all the different types of fibers in it. Then know that the location for this tissue is beneath, meaning deep, to epithelial tissues. Adipose tissue is fat tissue. The cell name is the adipocytes, which means the fat cell. So here adipose tissue stores fat, cushions, insulates. The location for adipose tissue is around our organs, covering our muscles, under the skin, also the mammary glands. Next, reticular connective tissue. So this has a bunch of reticular fibers in it. Reticular connective tissue is found in the liver and the spleen. Dense regular connective tissue. This is made up of a lot of collagen fibers. So here the collagen fibers are packed and they go in a parallel fashion. Here the cells, most cells are fibroblasts. Because this tissue is packed with collagen fibers, it's very, very strong. And this makes up our tendons and ligaments. Unfortunately, because it has poor blood supply, it is slow to heal. Dense irregular connective tissue. This also has many collagen fibers, but here the fibers are more randomly arranged. But it can withstand tension. The location for this tissue is the dermis of our skin. dermis of the skin is the middle layer of skin. Elastic connective tissue. This tissue is made up of many elastic fibers, as the name suggests, but it does have some collagen fibers. Most of the cells are fibroblasts. The location for this tissue are the walls of hollow organs, such as our aorta, large arteries, but also you would see this in the walls of the stomach, intestine. And so this tissue is able to stretch. Next, we'll go over the specialized connective tissues, cartilage being one type. So it's a very rigid, specialized connective tissue. It's important for support, framework, attachments, protection for the underlying tissue. And we'll learn when we get to the bone chapter that cartilage is the model for developing for the long bones, short bones, and irregular bones. Here the matrix is a gel-like ground substance. Note that the chondrocytes means cartilage cells. Here these cartilage cells are sitting inside of chambers called the lacunae. So here the dark spot inside is the chondrocyte, and the circle outside, this protective covering, is called the lacuna. If it ends in one A, that's a singular way of spelling it. If there's an E at the end after A, that's a plural word. However, cartilage lacks blood supply, so it's hard to heal on its own. We'll cover three types of cartilage: hyaline, elastic, and fiber. Hyaline cartilage, most common type. It has collagen fibers, but they're just not visible when the slide is stained, tissue is slain. Hyaline cartilage is found at the ends of our bones and joints. It also makes up our nose and the respiratory passages, meaning the trachea cartilages. And the picture at the bottom shows the ribs. I'm going to add here trachea and rib cartilages. Elastic cartilage. Do not confuse this with elastic connective tissue. Elastic connective tissue makes up our hollow organs, aorta, blood vessels, but here elastic cartilage makes up our external ear and the larynx. Larynx is our voice box. Fibrocartilage is very tough because it's packed with many collagen fibers. Therefore, it acts as a shock absorber and helps to withstand the forces of gravity. So intervertebral discs and pads of our knee and the pelvic girdle are the locations for this cartilage. Bone is also considered connective tissue. Here, bone has osteoblasts. Osteoblasts are the cells that build the bone. Once these osteoblasts build the bone, then they turn into osteocytes. Osteocytes means the bone, mature bone cell. In the bone chapter then, when we get to it, we'll talk about how there are these osteons, these circular, they look like tree trunk shapes. Blood is also considered to be a connective tissue, but it's the fluid type of connective tissue. Here, the matrix is fluid, and the matrix is called a plasma. And so this tissue type has red blood cells, white blood cells, there are platelets, and this tissue is important for transporting substances. Types of membranes. Membranes, it says they're really just sheets of cells. Epithelial membranes are composed of epithelial and connective tissues. So we have three types of epithelial membranes. Serous membranes. These are the membranes that cover some of our organs. If you remember, visceral or the parietal pericardium, visceral, parietal, pleura or the peritoneum. And so here it says that these membranes are made up of simple squamous tissue and areolar tissue. And if you remember, between the two layers, the visceral and the parietal layers, there is serous fluid for lubrication. Then mucous membranes. These membranes have goblet cells that make the mucus. These membranes line the cavities and the tubes. Know that the tissues making up these membranes are epithelial and areolar tissues. Cutaneous membrane. Cutaneous membrane covers the body surface. Know that it's commonly called the skin. And in the next chapter, we'll cover the integumentary system, which includes the skin, hair, and the nails. Synovial membranes, says these are different from epithelial membranes because they're composed of entirely of connective tissue. But no, the synovial membranes are found in our joints. Muscle tissues. There are three types. There's skeletal, cardiac, and smooth muscle tissues. Muscle cells are also called muscle fibers. Skeletal muscle tissues, these are attached to our bones. They have striations, they're striated, meaning that there are very thin lines that go across these muscle cells or these muscle fibers. As you can see on both of the pictures, seeing those very thin lines going down. And so these striations, these lines, are formed by actin and the myosin proteins, how they're arranged. Note that skeletal muscle tissue is voluntary, so we're consciously in control of skeletal muscles. They are multinucleated, they have many nuclei inside. They're long cylindrical cells. Skeletal muscle only works if it's stimulated by nerve signals. Smooth muscle, on the other hand, does not have striations. It's non-striated. Here the cells are more spindle-shaped. Smooth muscle is found in the walls of hollow organs and blood vessels. And smooth muscle is involuntary. Cardiac muscle tissue is found in the walls of our heart. Here, cardiac muscle tissue is made up of branching cells, versus skeletal muscle tissue is made up of parallel cells, but here these are branching. It's under involuntary control. It does have striations, just like skeletal muscle. But one thing that's special for cardiac muscle tissue is that it has intercalated discs, which are connections between the cells. Finally, nervous tissue is found in our brain, spinal cord, and our nerves. Know that the main cells making up nervous tissue are neurons. Then when we get to the nervous tissue chapter, we're going to cover how there are also these neuroglia, and these are the helper cells.